dog stick. Watch the trick.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sports Commercialization and Sports Series with me, Anthony Morrissey, the CEO and founder of AMSC. I've got another fantastic guest for you guys today. Can't wait to introduce them. Before that, just a quick update on little things that we're doing. So we've got some fantastic podcasts coming up already in the can, as they say, done and dusted with some fantastic guests, including a former manager or head coach of Munster Rugby who hasn't spoken to the Irish media since he left. So that's something I definitely can't wait for you to hear and see what he says. Also, loads of different people, from the director of marketing for the Chicago Bears right through to some former players of rugby like CJ Stander, as well as Hamish Adams, who's the CEO of Athletics Ireland. So a vast array of different people and different looks and different fields. I massively appreciate all your support. It really is beneficial. Jump onto my website, amsc.se, and all the details are down below. I've just noticed that I've given away the name of the person. So without further ado, I'll introduce him to him. This is one of the players' involvement that everybody's known across years within the rugby sector within Ireland. His knowledge of rugby, his understanding of the sport is so well shown on both TV and broadcast. He's also a keynote speaker, which we'll get into at a later stage. For me, I remember seeing him playing for Leinster and running around. It was absolutely fantastic to watch. And now it's great to actually talk to him. So I'll introduce him right now. Bernard Jackman, how you doing?
Yeah, good morning, Anthony. Thanks for having me on the show. I've listened to a couple of the previous episodes and loved it, so looking forward to chatting to you.
Yeah, I appreciate your time massively. Just on the whole factor of rugby, and people I've been speaking to about this and what it means to them. Go right back to the very start. When you were first young, getting involved with sport, where did your passion of sport come from? Was it from your family? Was it from your friends? Or was it just something that you enjoyed straight away?
Well, it came from my mum's side, actually. My dad wouldn't have any sporting background at all. He's a cattle dealer, and his passion is cattle and farming and marts and trucks, actually, because we're hauliers as well. So, but my mum would have brought me down to my local GA club, Coolkenno, from when I was about 6 years of age, and GA was my first love, to be honest. And it was only when I was sent to boarding school. I think my parents were afraid. I'm the eldest of our family. I think my parents were afraid I was too interested in following my dad's footsteps. So they sent me to boarding school to at least give me a choice and to get an education. Because unfortunately in my area there was a poor rate of people finishing the Leaving Cert. A lot of people were dropping out early, etc. So they sent me to boarding school, and in Newbridge, rugby was the main sport. So I took that up its first year, and then I combined it with GA every summer, all the way until Warren Gatland gave me a contract when I was about 20 years of age and told me no more Gaelic. So, I've always been chasing around the ball, and I love it. I still love Gaelic. I'm actually working with some GA teams at the moment around mindset and their culture. And obviously I'm very much involved in rugby as well. So I'm still very much ingrained in sport.
And I think as well, from when it looks at passion, everyone I speak to on this subject, they always mention either a family member or a friend or somebody that was in school or whatever. And I think that's really important, rather than mentioning a specific moment on the field that you remember. And from your perspective, is there any heroes when you were growing up, whether that be GAA, whether that be rugby, that you looked up to and said, you know what, that's the type of player I would like to be like?
Yeah, we so my mom's from Baltinglass, and Baltinglass won an All-Ireland club championship in Croke Park, and obviously everyone thinks of Carlow. I'm actually Wicklow Carlow border, and I played my football in Wicklow. So Baltinglass, I remember probably, I think it was 7 or 8, going to Croke Park to see Baltinglass play on St. Patrick's Day in an All-Ireland club final and winning it, and they were my heroes. And a guy, Sean O'Brien, so Kevin O'Brien was an all-star from Wicklow, but his brother Sean O'Brien actually coached me in Coolkenno. He had relations over there, so he was a kind of a centre back, only knew one way forward, and probably he was someone I admired. He was probably my first hero, to be honest, as a youngster growing up. And then obviously, as I started to watch a bit more rugby, it was guys like Simon Gagan, etc. But those days were dark days for Irish rugby. I mean, we'd have the odd, big scalp, but in general, I was on the school by Terrace and Lansdowne Road, getting out of boarding school for the day. I'd be delighted to be there, and the atmosphere was great on a 5 Nations or 6 Nations day, but realistically the results weren't anything like we're used to now.
I'd always think that, imagine Simon Gagan in the now professional era. What a superstar winger! Like, I remember watching that with my father as a young kid, and the whole tactics were get the ball to 10 and just throw it wide as you can, as quick as you can, get it out to Gagan, and just watch him run. He was a superstar. Anyone that's watching this that hasn't ever seen Simon Gagan play rugby, go back on YouTube and watch some of the tries. Superstar rugby player. That was interesting as well with the links you'd have within GAA. And I think GAA would be a unique sport across the world in the sense of it's so ingrained in the community. And you mentioned Baltinglass there, and it's so important to the community going through. When you then moved into Newbridge and into rugby and moving into like the Leinster schools area and the importance of the school, I'm assuming to your playing, was that what really kind of ingrained you in playing sport as well? Was that passion you would have had with your school friends or with representing someone?
Yeah, so I went in first. The Leinster Schools Cup's a big competition, and I wouldn't know nothing about it. I said my family have no background in rugby until I went into Newbridge, and then, you know, I remember going up to Donnybrook for the first round of the Schools Cup when I was in first year, and obviously I was playing rugby at the stage. I was on the A's in Newbridge, but we got hammered by Blackrock in the first round. Shane Byrne, Victor Costello. So it was a rock team, and even though we got hammered, I was blown away by the occasion. You know, the past few was the parents, the rival school kids, our own school, the songs, and I want to play in that. I want to be part of that, whether that's a junior cup team or senior cup team. So that sense of pride in representing my school followed on from representing my club, and obviously I was looking to play in the Wicklow as well. So I think it's a massive part of our society, our culture in Ireland, and it's ironic. It's not ironic, but it's interesting. So I studied international marketing in Japanese university, and I did a thesis on the correlation between high performance behavior in sport and business, and I visited Tokyo and Toyota, and Japanese society is a little bit different than ours in that effective. If you go into Toyota as an 18-year-old, there's a strong chance you want to leave at 66. Okay, I've never left Toyota, and they actually call themselves a Toyota man, a Toyota woman, like they do Sony man, Sony woman, or Hyundai man, Hyundai woman. Their identity is their job, and like on a Sunday they'll wear their Toyota polo shirt to the park. You know what I mean? Whereas we will wear our GA club fleece or county or provincial, provincial clothing to show that we attach ourselves to that. So so we're more parish, club, country, province, whereas they're very much attach themselves to their job, and it's just an interesting comparison.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating you say that about Japan or other international countries and how they see sport differently or how they see their lives differently and go about doing different things. And from your experience within the Irish sector and within that kind of area, did you find then once you were going through senior cup or when you got into that level, was it then that you started thinking, you know what, I want to go and make a career out of this? Or was it something like you said at the start that when Warren Gatland contacted you and said, look, I've got a contract here for you, this is an opportunity for you, and you went, okay, there's an opportunity, I'll take it?
Yeah, so my goal leaving school was to maybe play club rugby. Obviously to go and play until my body stopped. But if I could have played AIL at the time, I thought that would have been, you know, the maximum I could have achieved. And I worked hard to get to that. And then I was lucky. I played against Warren Gatland in a match one day. He was over on a sabbatical and he's player coach for Go Regions. I was playing for Clontarf. And later on that year, he ended up getting the Connacht coaching job to be the first professional coach in Connacht's history. And he remembered me and rang me. I was supposed to go to Japan for my third year. And he said, look, I'm going to Japan. He said, look, no one knows if rugby will stay professional. Because I don't know if you remember, but the vote to go professional was quite close. Yep. And the RFU actually voted no, but the World Rugby voted yes. So he said, look, you can always go back to Japan, but you never get back into professional rugby. So he compromised. I ended up being allowed to finish a degree in business studies in DCU while I took that contract, but I didn't go to Japan. But so for me, it all kind of happened by plenty of luck and circumstances. But like to be part of that first ever crop to go pro in Ireland, and then to spend 14 years involved in professional rugby in Ireland, and see, you know, my last year was 2010. So 2009, you know, I played in Croke Park. against Munster, 82,000 people. You know, when I started professional rugby in Connacht, we were getting maybe 2,000 people at a big Pro against Leinster. You know, and so it just grew and grew, and to be part of that journey was amazing. We didn't really appreciate it. I don't think. I think looking back now, I'm actually doing a gig next week with Malcolm McKelly and Mike Ross. So both of them would have been the kind of same vintage as me, and you know, I think we're so lucky compared to the current crop who at 16, 17 are in academy setups and pathways, and it's very much one lane. We got all the joys of it without the hardship, maybe.
It's funny you say that, because when I worked in Munster, I used to bring guys abroad and bring them across, and you'd see the guys who were like similar to yourselves, who would have been there, would have played club rugby, and then would have been part of the guinea pigs that would have started off professional rugby, etc. And you could see their bond. Not that their bonds were different; it was just that they were a different kind of attitude towards their sporting life and their sporting career. And I think that's an interesting mindset. You then going into coaching, if you go toward the end of the coaching, what you're looking at now in sport and rugby especially, would you see, other than the bit you said a second ago about the difference between club and then going into provincial stuff, would you see a massive change in how the sport is viewed from when you walked in the door, and when it comes to the player getting his contract, to getting involved within the club and the amount of hours that are there, versus what's happening now?
Yeah, totally. So I'll just my first year contracts. So everyone signed a 1 year the first time we were professional. And I remember at the end of that year, maybe in March or April, the CEO put up a list. So everyone's contract was renegotiated over 3 days. But they put up a list. So Monday morning at 9 o'clock, Eric Elwood, 10 o'clock, the next best player, right? And then basically, if you're on Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon, you pretty much knew you were getting the chop. Like that's how kind of haphazard it was. Whereas now things are done in a much more organized fashion. They generally don't let the best players' contracts run down. You know, if you're performing, they'll try and renegotiate you during your contract to make sure you've got stability and they've got stability. There's a lot more data behind decisions. You know, depth charts are much more important than, you know, the opinion of a coach or unit coach. And yeah, it's way more. You've also access to way more information around what's happening in the world and benchmarking your players against the best players in the world. So I think that's been amazing, and to be part of that recruitment. So which I was in Grenoble and Dragons, and kind of trying to work your way through that with sometimes limited budgets and trying to find rough diamonds, etc. Is really that's one of the better parts of the job, to be honest. But I think the game, whether it's nutrition, whether it's S&C, whether it's, you know, well-being, mental health, all those things, medical care, concussion awareness, like the game has moved on like so much. Thank God it has, because the game is far more physical and harder now. And anyone who watched Ireland and South Africa will agree with that. I would like to think, but the players have better support around them to be able to go and be the warriors that they are.
Also, as well, I'd be very interested to get your take of when you first got your first year contract. First of all, I love that story about them going through the list and you having to look where you are in the list. That's brilliant. I can think. I was Tuesday
lunchtime. So
yeah,
I wasn't sure if I was getting pre-negotiated or I was getting the chop. Yeah,
you were right at the edge. And I remember the late great Gareth Fitzgerald, who was my CEO at Munster. I'm sure he would have done the exact same thing in the start at Munster. From the perspective of when you first walked in the door in year one in Connacht, the branding element to it and the commercialization part of it, and having a lot of expectations to do. Now, when you work at Leinster, Munster, Ulster, Connacht, or any club around the world, you've got expectation of you as a professional to turn up to gigs, but to be a certain type of gig, and it would change as it go. When it was the first year at Connacht, or first couple of years at Connacht, what did that look like, or did it look like anything at all from a player's perspective?
No, it was very haphazard, to be honest. I think the start of professional rugby, it was very much the provinces felt the IRFU were there to contract the players, pay for the travel, etc. And the branding element of it wasn't something that I think was taken seriously. Or maybe, look, I'm not sure. I can't really remember if that was the same in other professional sports. I'd imagine it wasn't. But I think the first couple of years we were still trying to find out how we're going to finance this. And to be honest, I actually still think we're still trying to find out how we're going to finance it. But obviously, there's better people and more expertise, people like you involved, in the commercial side of it to try and help grow the brand, maximize revenue, and also build strong relationships with corporate partners that will last test of time. You know what I mean? Like in any negotiations or deal, everyone, like both parties have to win, to create sustainability. So I think there's a much better understanding across the board and now, and like I would be honest, I would say we're still behind France and Ireland. So in France, they realized that they need to open their doors, they need to engage to survive. So the TV money is brilliant, but obviously there's no safety net or help from the federation. Really, clubs can go out of business if they don't eat. They eat what they kill, really. So I would say, for example, at halftime in a top 14 match, we've had sponsors in the dressing room. You know what I mean? And you could say that's too much, but for those sponsors or those sponsors' clients, they are getting, I suppose, the real thing. They can be at the pre-match talk. They can be training sessions are always open. The press will be in our changing room after training. Lads having showers, lads doing ice baths, lads getting stitched, and the press are doing interviews. It's a unbelievably open environment, which I think helps sell the game. Helps sell the game in France, and that's part of the reason why it's growing stronger and stronger. So yeah, I think there's been big improvements here. There's good expertise at commercial level in the Irish provinces, but sometimes I think there's also that handbrake that we put on ourselves to protect players, to protect coaches, and that actually kills access, and that kills. I'll use O'Gara as an example. I think Ronan is an unbelievable communicator, but he practices a lot. You know what I mean? So if they had lost to Leinster in the last two Champions Cup finals, I guarantee people would have said, "Sure, what do you expect? He's on news talk, on a Tuesday morning, and he's not concentrating." But the reality is, they won, right? They won, so that showed that didn't distract him. But I actually think he is a better communicator to his players and staff, etc., because it's something he practices all the time. And whether that's doing a podcast or whether it's doing a Q&A or whether it's doing off the ball or whatever, it's a skill he practices, and it makes La Rochelle. It's helped La Rochelle grow. La Rochelle were 2015. La Rochelle were in Pro League 2. Now they've sold out 84 games in a row, or whatever, European champions. It's not all down to him, but it helps when you've got people that are interesting, that are working for you.
I think it's really interesting as well is that America has been doing this for 3 or 4 years. You look at the NFL or you look at NBA, they're open book, and you can pretty much go in anywhere at any time and go in. I totally agree with you regarding Roger. I totally agree with you. Other people have skilled it right, and they've created an aura about the club and a connection about the club that's a little bit different. And to be fair, I can see Leinster doing very similar stuff over the last 4 or 5 years, where they've grown the brand, not just looking at the team and what goes on the field, but they're trying to look at the overall bigger picture that's there. I know they're going to America soon for one of their events and try to grow that market like Munster have done previously. So I can see the benefits of what you're saying. I can also agree with you on the handbrake thing, and that goes across all sports where there's certain sanctum that's not allowed to go past and go into. But I also think you can use that to your benefit also. So if you've got a scenario where no one is allowed in the dressing room, that's just us, that's just our team, you can then have a way of overcoming that by getting access before, after, during certain spots that allows your head coach or allows your team to interact with a small number of people. Because the way commercialization is going now, it's no longer let's put our logo on a jersey, let's put a couple of signs on the board, give them a couple of tickets and they'll be fine and we'll see them next year. It's about engagement now. It's about whether that's a CSR program with their internal staff or whether that's a longer term program outside of that where they're looking at different opportunities, just quirky different opportunities that are there. And I think that's fun. Interesting, when you went to France, when you made that decision to go coaching into France, was it an eye-opener as much as I would believe it would be, i.e. was the language an issue, or was it a situation where you went there and said, okay, I want to embrace this as much as I can and get involved with the culture within the club? Or was it just literally, I see this as a massive opportunity for me as a rugby coach to grow?
A bit of all of them, to be honest. I think I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to be a professional coach forever, but I certainly wanted to live in France and play and be involved in French rugby. So I had a few opportunities to go there as a player, but if you leave Ireland for France, that's the end of your international career, and rightly so. So, so that was the plan. I wanted to use rugby as a medium to get the opportunity to bring myself, my family to France for a year, probably, to be honest. Now I didn't have any French. I did German in school and Japanese university, so that wasn't ideal. But to be honest, I loved that. Like at 35, to have to learn a language from scratch was amazing. It wasn't easy. It was far from easy, but I got stuck into it. Also, I think I benefited from the fact that my coach's environment was completely through French. So I think you can go to France for 3 or 4 years as a player and actually not learn French, because you will just hang around with the Islanders or the other foreign, the Kiwis, or South Africans and French are pretty good generally at embracing the language, because they're usually bilingual. So they pick up that French quite quickly, and a lot of them want to stay 5 years to get a passport, so they do buy into it. But sometimes I would say some of the other foreigners that I've experienced have not bought into the opportunity to become fluent or capable of communicating well in French. Whereas I think for me, I wanted to do it, so I got extra lessons. The club gave me lessons, and then I was in an environment during the day where effectively, if I didn't understand French, I didn't know what was happening. Now, for the really big things, I could ask. And
I appreciate that.
But that was good. I mean, that is good, and it was a phenomenal. It wasn't a professional environment. Like, I mean, there was so much things that I didn't agree with, that was alien to me as someone who come through, the Irish system. But like, it's not Ireland, it's France, and you gotta work within the boundaries of how they see things. You try and make small changes that can have a big impact, but also ignore the small things that won't, because it has to be their identity. So, for example, Grenoble, just the demographics of it's in the Alps. Traditionally, Grenoble teams back in the 60s, 70s were big mountain men, big farmers, and the game was forward dominated, a little bit like Munster back in the day, where it was a pack, 10-man rugby. So we would score a try from 10 pick and goals, and the crowd would go crazy. We'd run a try from our own line with seven offloads, 10 phases, and you get a clap. But that's Grenoble. That's what the fans want. They want a big scrum. They want a big maul. They want a big mean pack. So you kind of have to, if you want to have their support and you want to have a successful commercial venture, whatever, well, you have to feed into that. Do you know what I mean? So you have to give sometimes on how you see the game going. You have to recruit players or retain players who can give you that profile. So that was fascinating. And each region of France is unique in itself. And the passion over there is phenomenal. So I had some of my most amazing experiences on the sideline in Toulouse. We beat Toulon away. And obviously home games, beating Clermont, etc. Crazy, 22,000 people sell out. And the French fans, as the Irish public are seeing now in stadia across France for this World Cup, like when they go to an event, they are there to give everything to support their team, like we saw again the Irish fans do against South Africa, etc. But it's everywhere, every week over there. So it was unbelievable. We stayed for 5 years. I've got good French. My kids are bilingual. My wife is great French, and it was phenomenal. It was amazing. But yeah, so I loved that opportunity.
Yeah, it's also. I mean, I'm learning a language. I live in Sweden. I fully get it. The problem I have in Sweden is they're such amazing English that it's exactly what you said. It can become difficult. So you have to try and force people to remember the language you're speaking to. And I think it's important going into the culture of it. So it's interesting what you said about Grenoble being a specific type of rugby team, i.e. their values as in what they want on the field. And then that I'm assuming would incorporate off the field as well, where there would be brands and commercial stuff who would feel very linked to that community, who would want to link into your team because of it. And the reason I say that is you also made the point about everything is unique. So what works in Toulouse may not work in Toulon, what works in Toulon may not work in Grenoble, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that also goes for brands and commercializing of stuff. So the commercial entity of what you're looking at isn't the same thing no matter where you go. So just because X brand is connected to Toulouse and they're into rugby, that doesn't mean that brand will work with your club. as a kind of the head coach and kind of where you were in Grenoble, would you have seen that, or was it very much that's somebody else's role? I'm focused just on the field.
No, that's the difference in France, is that as head coach, you are effectively the ambassador for, or the face of the rugby. So you have a huge role. I probably did more corporate partner events than I did coaching. Like like you are out there. So we had 146 different sponsors, and they're tiered, right? So you've got Sogeti, which is your main one. I can't remember how we classified it, but like effectively we would have had 5 like big sponsors, and then we broke it down. But like down as far as the local boulangerie could have a high table in effectively a marquee which holds 2,000 people every home game, and he had four invitees. Okay, so that would be free bar. I mean, when I had free bar and finger food, like lovely food, but the idea was that it's not formal. And actually, to be honest, the Sogeti will be in the same room. I mean, they had a corporate box afterwards, but it's effectively 2,200, I think it was, partners or sponsors and their invitees being in a room together, pre-match, some of them halftime, and then afterwards. And the players would come in, the coaches would come in, the coach would speak beforehand. Like you do your pre-match speech to the players, and you go straight across, and you basically give the room an insight into how the game was going to go. And when we got good at it, we actually showed some footage as well, pre-match. So, but the idea is to make them feel part of the journey, and to do that, they need access, and they want to press the flesh. And it was just part of, like, you couldn't put your hand. This is how it's done. This is how it's done. Whether you like it or not, that's your role. So, and like as I said, it's from the smallest guy who may or lady who's maybe paying 1,500 quid a year for that access, but for them that's like spending $1 million. It's them, and we need them. We need everybody. We needed everybody, and yeah. So, and then also just the idiosyncrasies of the region. Grenoble is called a Silicon Valley of France, so we had a lot of high tech companies, scientific based companies in Grenoble, some nuclear power based companies. We had a lot of American companies. We had 84 American companies in Grenoble. So again, some of that was my language. My English being my first language was beneficial for that, because I could obviously get into more depth with them than maybe the previous coach who had good English but was not native French. So lots of different things. But like our commercial team were brilliant, but they have to be, because, and unfortunately, we lost our sugar daddy passed away. The guy who was giving us the main sponsor, Sogeti, passed away, and we went. He was giving us a sponsorship for $3 million for a jersey a year, and obviously the company decided not to continue that. But it wasn't just that. We found out we got another 1.6 million based around companies that were doing business with him, who basically felt, so suddenly then we had to sell players, we had to cut staff salaries, cut administration staff, and the club basically got relegated because of it. So, even though I'm praising our commercial team, they did a great job, sometimes outside factors can affect that as well.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I remember kind of following the Grenoble story because of yourself being over there, and I kind of keep an eye on the Irish players that were playing over there too. And I think it was a kind of fascinating story to watch you guys taking on the big boys, and then the sadness then, of course, obviously with the owner passing, or the benefactor passing away, and then it all kind of went from there. And sometimes stuff commercially is almost out of your control. When you then came back to Ireland, and we're looking to do what you do now, which is, I must admit, I'm not just blowing smoke, but you're a fantastic analyst on TV, and you've been getting praise online, which I think is very much worthy of you. And then taking it into what you do and kind of like keynote speaking and stuff along the lines of that. Would there be a lot of stuff you'd have taken from the rugby field, as in structure-wise, and how you'd have set up your week and set up your time, that you can then take into what you do now?
Yeah, look, of course. I mean, you're used to this amazing roller coaster of prepare, plan, prepare, act, reevaluate, go again. It's just like, it's every week. So effectively, like I work with some clients and companies where they get an end of year review. You know what I mean? Like we're getting that. We're not just getting it on a Saturday. We're getting it on a Tuesday or a Thursday when you actually review the plan you put in place and your ability to enact it properly. So it's been brilliant, that preview process, that kind of focus on learning and getting better and being resilient as well. I mean, I'm just thinking about a piece this morning about the two best performers for Ireland at the weekend were probably James Lowe and Bundy Aki, right? So just their own story. So Bundy was sent off in September down in South Africa, was dropped for Connacht for a while. There was all kinds of rumors about whether he was staying, leaving, and he hasn't let that affect him, and now he's probably in the form of his life. James Lowe, 2.5 years ago, was dropped from Ireland because he couldn't tackle, and at the weekend he was the best defender on the field. So that's sport, gives you that opportunity to basically fail but succeed, if you have the right mindset and the right support around you. So I suppose I've been very lucky that I have that. Then I've worked in the real world. I worked for two multinationals, Reuters, selling market data into financial services in Ireland, and then a company called Gartner, which is a big research and advisory firm. So I kind of had that exposure to the corporate world. I know it's different, right? I know, because I sometimes feel, I understand when a sports person comes into a corporate environment. Well, some people could say, "Oh, it's easy to be motivated to play for Leinster or Munster or Ireland or whatever," and I understand that because I've been in both camps. But I genuinely believe it's that people follow people, and if you can create the right story and the right connection to that story, well, then there's no reason why work can't be as enjoyable as chasing our dreams on a sporting field. And the really good companies and the really good leaders, they get that right. They get that connection, they get that storytelling, they get environments, they get that sense of trust right. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. So what I did was, when I retired, before I went to France, I did a thesis. I said on the correlation between high performance behaviors in elite sport and business teams, and I went traveling, and then I did the research as well. But mainly, I'm not an academic. I'm more of a pracademic. So I learned by visiting and seeing. So I went to Dyson. I went to Man United under Alex Ferguson. I went to Tokyo. I went to Sydney Swans. Ty Kennelly had just won the AFL, and I got in there. I went to Carlton. I went to Melbourne Storm. I went to Google. I went to Rolex. So I went to basically companies that I admired that I could get into, to be honest. I needed an in, and tried to work out why they're successful, and was there a correlation between those behaviors in top sport teams, top business teams, and could they be repeated? But then how can I explain that? So I do it through storytelling and don't show slides, don't show graphs. I said, I'm not that way minded. I don't knock people to do that. I think that can be a phenomenal way of communicating, but for me, it's not how I communicate. So and now I've kept it up. So every year now I go to a team that I admire. I'm a United fan, so I was hoping to go back to United this year, but I'm not sure about Ten Hag at the moment. I thought he was going to turn it around, but maybe that's going to be fascinating itself. So look at I went to Red Bull Formula One. Yeah, I love trying to work out. I'm fascinated by Ireland at the moment. Like I obviously know some of the players. I think Farrell is unique in so many ways, and what he's building is fascinating, and it could be a great case study there if things keep going the way that we think hopefully they're going to go. Regardless, look, for to win 16 games in a row at test level and to be number one in the world, and Grand Slam winners, there's a case study there already, but it could be a top case study if we next 5 weeks go as we hope.
Exactly. But the other thing as well, which I find fascinating, talking about case studies you're doing, and I'll move on to the last topic I'll get to then, but I'm obsessed with the NFL. NFL is something I'm a big fan of, and I find it really interesting regarding clubs and franchises, as they call them over there, how the expectation level is and how quickly it turns. So from 1 minute, they let's say they lose their first 2 games, and everyone's getting fired. And it's just a different mindset. While let's say over in Europe, there's a little bit more patience maybe involved with teams. And I'd be fascinated then from you long term when you look at different countries and different kind of attitudes towards things. Moving into the last topic I want to talk to you is the future of sport, the way you see it going. And I say this at the start because it was brought up to me really, really early in doing this podcast series about women, because I kept on saying women is the future of sport. And I then looked at a TED Talk, and in the TED Talk it was said very quickly that women's sport is now. It's the present. It's not It's not the future. It's what's happening right now. So excluding that kind of conversation, where do you see sport going now? And I'm not just talking about rugby, but sport as a whole, especially post-pandemic, especially what we've all kind of gone through over the last 3 or 4 years and getting through that, and now looking forward. Where's the next steps, you think, in sports evolution?
I think what's the biggest thing post-pandemic is experiences. So people want experiences. That's they like going to a match on a Saturday used to be what we thought was our life, but and it's still a massive part of a lot of people's lives, but it needs to be more than that. You need to hit them, and there's so many different senses, and to make them part of something special. And I think the American football, I just finished watching Hard Knocks, right, which I love. It's just kind of the behind the scenes as such for the last 20 seasons. This year's the New York Jets, and Aaron Rodgers did, so I'm following Aaron Rodgers because of Hard Knocks, because I think I know him, or I think I know more about him, and I know his personality, and I can make a decision whether I like him or not. And then he does his Achilles tendon, and I mean I go, wow, that's like, so I'm gonna follow them for the year now, because I had access, because I know individuals in that team. Sorry, I think I know individuals in the team from what I've been given, right? But that's how I see it. As I said, I said it earlier, people follow people. If I know a little bit more about Aaron Rodgers, I'll follow him. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I think it's there's been a bit of, so the Asian sports fans, they tend to follow individuals, right? And this was the thought process between for the World Cup. So the Japanese clubs basically wanted to sign the stars of the World Cup, because the fans will follow the player rather than the team. Yeah. Okay, so and that's kind of like, if you see, I read something before about Everton signed a Japanese player, and suddenly they sold a load of merchandise, and their fan. So, but I think that's not just Asian society anymore. I think that's becoming more prevalent in Western society. So, I'm a big fan of say Jim Hamilton, right? So Jim Hamilton is now working for World Rugby, and he's pitch-sided all these games, trying to, like this weekend he had Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry pitch-side. He had Jared Butler for one of Scott. He's trying to get Kylian Mbappe down to the sideline, but he wouldn't come. Like, he's trying to do what American or NBA did, with the pitch, the courtside seats are celebrities. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think rugby, we need to try and use other sports as examples of how to market ourselves, but also other sports stars, when they engage with us, to help us bring our game to a different audience, because there's so many good things in our game that superstars of other sports admire and are interested in, but we sometimes just take for granted. So I think that's it. And then the experience on a match day, whether you're at the stadium or whether you're at home. And I think, I'll be honest, and I'm part of this, so I don't know if we're doing a good enough job as pundits to actually make it interesting, and to bring new fans in. And like, for example, World Rugby. So I'm putting up clips on Twitter and stuff, right, of analysis pieces, and there's nothing new in the pieces I'm putting up, but I can't leave them up. Like, I got a good engagement there. I had a clip of that had over 300,000 views on Twitter, right? So it was going viral as such, or viral for me anyway. And I had to take it down, because I took it down myself before I got blocked. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, I've gone, and not saying like, not clap myself on the back here, but I've gone and actually watched the game, cut it up, put some music to it, put it out there, right? And people are liking it, okay? And there's no doubt that was going to end up on people's phones that maybe aren't rugby fans, right? And maybe they will say, "Jesus, that's interesting. I'll watch Ireland's next game or whatever. Or I'll watch a World Cup game." And maybe they won't. I don't know. But the idea, the problem is, as you said back at the start, the Americans realized, get it out there, get everybody marketing what we do, okay, rather than put all the pressure on the heads of content, right? So that's what's frustrating at the moment, is that, and I understand people pay for rights, etc., etc. But I don't know, like, for example, if I want to watch the highlights of one of the games weekend, I find it very hard to get them on the award. So is that like that? That's not good. This is our showcase. The next one of these is 4 years time, and we've seen in the last year the financial pressure that's on some clubs, some unions, etc.
Yeah.
And if we don't maximize our chances here, we're gone. So I think we need to tell our story better. We need to make people be part of the experience. I don't have the intellect to do this, but there's people out there who know how to do it, right? And that's the future of the game for me. And things like AI. I mean, I've seen some stuff that some of the broadcasters in America are looking at in terms of being able to give the people at home insights into actually movements in an American football game and all that, and predicted movements. And I think that is interesting. It's not interesting for everybody, but maybe there's 5% of people who will be interested in that. Well, then you got to feed that, so that's I'm after waffling away there, but I think it's storytelling, it's experience, and it's the stars on the pitch or the coaches being people understanding what they are, what they stand for, and who they are.
Accessible. And I think I totally agree with you, but I find unbelievably frustrating is that I get to see a try and I want to go and get the analysis from somebody who has played the game, and suddenly I can't get access to it because it's blocked or it's only there for a small period of time. And if you're saying what you said about the rights, and you are correct, that's the reason why it says rights in certain countries. But if I'm the director of that rights owner, I want people to see it because there's more likelihood they're going to watch the next game on my TV channel. I don't get the whole why you're blocking it off. I find it strange, if I'm completely honest. You're right as well. This is the showcase for 4 years' time. And anyone that my father-in-law would have no interest in rugby would have brought up in Sweden, but he watched that game and he understood the power of it. He understood the skill involved and the just the sheer physicality of it. And that's what you want to grow. That's how the sport grows. And also what I loved about the game at the weekend was that it was just there was no incident where you'd sit there and go, oh God, that's a red card. It wasn't impacted by anyone else other than the players on the field. And getting to know those guys. Munster have a thing now called Access Munster, which allows you to go inside into the HBC in Limerick and goes in around the stadium. That's a start. And I think other clubs could look at that model and try to change it to uniquify it for themselves and kind of work off the back of that. I've taken loads of your time up, so I won't keep you any longer than just this quick fire stuff so we get to know Bernard Jackman a little bit better. It's 9 to 10 quick questions. Answer them as quick as you can, whatever comes to your head. Don't worry, I'm not trying to catch you out. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Netflix or the cinema?
Cinema.
What's the last thing you saw in the cinema? Can you remember? Or the best thing you saw in the cinema, whichever one you want to go with.
Probably one of the movies with my kids. I could have been actually Barbie. I had to bring my daughter to Barbie. So.
See, 40% of the people that have asked this question and said cinema have said Barbie as well, by the way. Your favorite food?
Chinese.
What do you miss the most about playing? Can you hear me? So, and then you've got, what do you miss most about playing?
That 10 minutes afterwards where you're having a beer in the dressing room and you feel like you've put in a good shift.
One stadium that you haven't been to already that you would love to be at?
Dallas Cowboys.
Great call, by the way. In Sweden, we have a thing called fika. Fika is where you get coffee and cake, beautiful cake, like donuts or something like that. And then you would be all together as a group, whether that's your family or your friends, and everyone kind of sits around and has a bit of coffee, a bit of cake, goes on for around 45 minutes. So would you go have a fika or would you prefer go to the pub?
Snug in a pub with a couple of pals.
Brilliant. Your top 3 dinner guests of all time, dead or alive?
AP McCoy, Willie Mullins, and Ruby Walsh.
There's a little link there. I should have pushed a bit further than that. My sister and my brother-in-law would join you in that conversation.
Okay,
they would be straight in there. I wouldn't know what I was talking about, but they would know exactly what I was speaking about. Last one. That's the one I ask all the time. If sport was banned in the morning, banned worldwide, you weren't allowed to talk about sport, weren't allowed to go to sport, be part of it, but you still got paid, you still got money. The money wage wasn't an issue involved in what you were doing. How would it impact your life?
Massively. I wouldn't have a sense of purpose. Most of my purpose is, apart from family, is around enjoying sport at all levels, schoolboys, underage, amateur, professional. So yeah, it'd be a massive void in my life.
Yeah, it would. I think I would. I don't know what I would do. I genuinely don't know what I would do. I would have loads of this time that I wouldn't know what I would spend it on. Bernard, where can people find your stuff, or where can people
Yeah,
check
look,
out?
I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, Instagram. You can reach out to me. Yeah, look, Bernard@bernardjackman.com. Happy. I'm very lucky. I'm at an amazing stage in my life where I'm working with people that I admire and with teams that are passionate about getting better. So everything's going great. Thank you.
Bernard, thank you so much for your time. I massively appreciate you jumping on and taking up, especially in a busy time around the World Cup and stuff coming on. And hopefully in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be seeing loads of celebration in Ireland, especially as the two of us want to. But hopefully the tournament itself is what we all hope it will be, and a cracker final, a cracker semi-final, and maybe Ireland getting that bit further than we normally do historically. So that's something I'm really, really hopeful for. So thank you so much for your time. I massively appreciate you being involved.
Thank you, and best of luck with everything. Love what you're doing.
Cheers, mate. Thanks very much. Now, that was a fascinating insight into what it's like for somebody who's gone through their career and is kind of focused on taking opportunities, which he did with going to Grenoble. But what stood out for me is he kept on going on about people follow people. And I think if you're looking at it from a commercial aspect of anything like that, that's something you do have to remember as well, that when you're getting involved with brands, when you're getting involved with clubs, make sure you get the right people around you. The other thing as well I thought was interesting was his experience in Grenoble and all the sponsors and the importance that they sat within it and how they were entitled to be able to grow within that and how they used that to best achieve success for the Grenoble organisation and club. And that's something that any club or any federation can look at. It's the ability to remember that, yeah, you've got your top end sponsors, but you've also got your bottom end ones too. And that's really important, I think, for any club or federation growing together or a brand as a whole to try and see if we can grow into it. Thank you. I thought it was a fascinating conversation. We've done much longer than I normally do. I'm really sorry to him for taking up his time, but it was brilliant to listen to, and I hope you enjoyed it. My music's going to kick me out now. I can feel it coming on any second. Thank you so much again for all your support, all the nice words that people have said and the contents that people have said. So I massively appreciate every single one of you. And until we see you again, thanks very much for your time. Good luck.